Hello. Today I'm going to talk about the test-driven development as a part of the course um, presentation. Let me talk about the introduction about what TDD is. TDD is a concept pretty much in a computer science that is used to programming that is used in programming to uh, enhance the quality of the coding, and it requires the software programmers they develop the uh, code first, and once the code is developed, then then it helps to the cleaning up, and the process of testing and cleaning is repeated every time with a new procedure. It has been proven to be a good approach over the years. It has several other goals. um, the major goals is specification as opposed to validation, in that allows software programmers to think through their designers, and it is the development process of writing a test first, followed by um, the just followed by the enough code to satisfy the test. Then finally, the important step for this is refactoring, and not only it proves that the emerging code correctly satisfies the test, but it adds developers in thinking about the designs of the code they write, and it keeps the focus on small iterated steps that collectively build solid functionality and ultimately result in working software. And in addition, tests by their nature provide valuable and documentation. The test grows to form a catalog of how the software should behave and also capture the intent of the developer. Add to this bonus that tests travel with the software, providing valuable regression feedback during the subsequent phases of development or maintenance, and TDD certainly stacks up as a convincing for success. Um, and let me give some overview of some of the TDD. It pretty much relies on in this process the software is tested every single time, and the code is thoroughly checked before it's implemented, and it also find the issues in the granular level, so that when the software is delivered, it's very qualitative, and it also helps to promote the development of the high quality code, and it's non-visually oriented, and it is a method in which the repeatedly there is a unit test in the beginning of the coding cycle. The unit tests are very precise and self-contained, and testing first determines the development cycle and it also helps to shape the end product. And so what's important with the TG is just not writing tests, but also with the great writing great tests. But there are also some challenges with this process. If we are pretty much writing your own test, your test and program are subjected to your like a blind spot, the thing like we might not anticipate about our code expectations. So if we fail to write a test, that should have written it more correctly. So if we also write more tests than are needed, and it just obviously waste our time. Ultimately, um, it's very development paradigm in the last few years, and last it has been like used by the different companies and organizations. Let me give some features of the TDD. One of the major goals, it's specification as opposed to validation, in that allows software to think about their designs, requirements before, and they can plan accordingly. Therefore, TDD is both like sample and technique, and it's based on agile software requirement in the computer science, and TDD also helps in highly functional technique in programming, and its main goal is to write the clean and quality code. The main aim of um, this paper or this power presentation is to describe the TDD, assessing its primary factors that either contribute to the success or failure of application. And the main features is by writing unit tests, the programmer is challenged to consider some cases and implications, and with its incremental and test-driven nature, it helps in the modular design and minimizing the debugging effort, and it helps to maintain the focus on our needs also, and the test cases are easier to understand than the very large big test cases, and it also helps to reduce the effort of debugging when used by using the version control system in these features. And let me describe some of the techniques that TDD use. TDD is very developmental technique that completely transfers traditional development. In traditional, they use like different software applications to run the automation or manual testing. So when the software programmer thinks about implementing a new feature, the first thing they think about is whether the existing design is the best kind of design to enable them implement the new feature, and if it is, the next step is to proceed with the undertaking. And some of the techniques that involves in writing test cases. It helps to like for example, let me give you an example. When you use a Visual Studio, there are some steps that we need to just make sure like you have the VSTS test project in your solution available for creating new tests, and that project should reference the class library in which we intend to add new functionality. And also we need to understand the requirements of the features that we're going to work on. Then we need to create the test case and see and make it fail, and see like how long does it take to fail, and check some logs and create the new production code stub and run the test again, and it should fail. This is calibration measure to ensure that our test is calling the correct code and that the code is not working by an accident. So when it's green, make the test passes by necessary, and like then after we need to refactor. In the case, change the code to remove duplication in our projects and to improve the design, and repeat its cycle. Then this process is repeated for the traditional for the TDD development technique. And so there are like a lot of benefits using the TDD, and as Nelson, I got a reference from the Nelson affirms that the techniques allows the programs to do this bit by bit and in small steps, which involves taking one test at a time with small bits of an equivalent functional code. TDD technique do not write a new function before it starts test fails because they can get a working function. The TDD cannot add even a single coding line until there is an existing test for a new function. The first step is to take a test. The second step is to run all tests to see if the new one will fail or not. The third step is to write a code before running the code again. The other steps is to refactor code, and the last step is to refactor code before repeating the entire process again. Some of the benefits also includes the suite of the unit test provides constant feedback that each component is still working, so there's some kind of notification that we can see, and the unit test act as documentation that cannot go out of date, and also the software tends to be better designed, that is loosely coupled and easily maintainable, because the developer is free to make a design decision and refactor at any time. And also it definitely reduces the debugging time, so that's a very good plus point. And there are some good unit testing which runs fast, like, and if the tests are so there, they will not run often. Let me talk about some of the analysis and description of the TDD. Analysis and description of the TDD given in the in the text that I described above. It can be deduced that TDD is a great technique that can produce highly quality applications in very short time when compared with the traditional techniques. TDD ensures high quality codes because it gives software programmers an acceptance criteria by aligning a list of features that should met. And TDD is an important technique for them to use because it narrows their focus down, increasing the productivity. And also it also enables them to write like one test which is bound to fail, and then do it again in order to make it pass. And also TDD completely turns traditional development around. Like when we first go to implement a new feature, the first question that we ask is whether the existing design is the best design possible that enables us to implement that functionality. So if so, then we proceed via this TDD refactoring, which is TDD is also the process of TFD plus refactoring. TDD is then we do TFD approach first. If not, then then we refactor it locally to change the portion of the design. And there are like two levels of TDD: acceptance TDD and developer TDD. Um, and so let's go over some conclusion. TDD, it is very like granular testing level. There's going to be like very qualitative code as delivered, and also it like there are like some if the software program doesn't have the considerable skills needed. So it is important to note that the final results of these techniques are only good as test carried out in the initial stages. Therefore, the thoroughness of those tests have a greater effect on the final product. So the significant advantage of TDD is that it enables us to make small steps when writing software. So this is a practice that we've been that it has been out for years, and it seems like it has been very productive. And then attempting to code in large steps. For example, assuming you add, for example, if we add some functional code, compile and test it, chances are pretty good that our test will be broken by defects that exist in the new code. It is much easier to find and then fix those defects if we write 2 lines of code than thousands. So that's pretty much all for today, and these are some of the references that I used while while making this presentation, and thank you all.